right. What you need in the building. Hope you guys are having a good night. This is a very surprise stream. What you need usually don't. I'm Anson Phillip, also known as What You Need. You're watching my channel. If you want to donate via PayPal, I will try to put that at the end of the stream, or I may even pin up the link in the chat, though I don't think I'll do that this time around. All right. I want to talk about a lot of things, but first, let me start off by saying, praise be to the Most High God for us being here. Um, there's a lot I want to say concerning what I just said, but suffice it to say, it's good to be alive and in the land of the living. So we'll just leave it at that. All right. All right. So what we're going to talk about today is whatever topics you want to talk about, and I know this is an odd hour, so I don't even expect anybody to be up right now to be engaging me. But when you guys see this video anyway, you're gonna watch it, and you can always speed it up to 2x if you want to. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. But what is important is that in the chat section and also in the discussion of this video, not the chat section, the comment section, and the discussion of this video, I'll try and put the link so you guys can donate via PayPal if you so wish. All right, I want to get into this, but first I want to start with the Most High God. All right, so we're gonna look at John chapter 2. Get this down packed. John chapter 2. Hold a second. John chapter 2, and we're gonna look at verse. All right, we're gonna look at verse 18, 19, 20, and 21. All right. Then Jesus answered the Jews and said to them, no, then answered the Jews and said to Jesus, because Jesus went into the temple and, they were doing a lot of commerce inside of there, and Jesus didn't like it. He started overthrowing temples, overthrowing their tables and stuff. And he said, man, this is supposed to be the house of prayer. You made it a den of thieves, right? So after that happened, okay. After that happened, they turned to him and they said, "What sign would you show us, seeing that you do these things?" Because they were saying, "Well, what power you have to do these things?" And Jesus said, "Well, but my Father." And they said, "All right, well, show us a sign." So Jesus answered and said to them, "Destroy this temple." Remember, he's inside the temple. "And in 3 days I'll raise it back up." Then the Jews said, 46 years this temple has been in building. How will you bring it back in 3 days? But he was really speaking about his temple, his body temple. So when he was risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said to them, and they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus had said. It's always a double speak. What does this have to do with anything? Well, you have to call to remembrance certain things. And I want to go through a couple things from my past history as what you need on my channel. And interface with other channels and other people in other groups. And I had gotten ridiculed for saying, because a guy called D Styles, he said to me, "Which would you prefer to be in the dark alley with, Deontay Wilder or Chocolatito?" I said, "Neither. Both would knock me out if they were coming at me." And this aged very well, because now I'm hearing people are realizing now that they see professional boxers, and we see professional boxers and citizens who start to box, we see the difference in knowledge level, skill level. And then when we see elite professional boxers face guys significantly bigger than them, but guys who, are civilians basically, it's a totally different story. Even guys who never boxed before and who never pro boxers, it's a totally different story, even though they may have been in combat sports. So, these I was saying, he would take out a woman if a woman was boxing him or whatever. Listen, that's ego. The truth be told, the knowledge in boxing, you know, a person who is just a pro boxer would take out D Styles, man or woman, they would take him out because it's about the knowledge of the sport. A lot of people do not understand a lot about boxing. Roger Mayweather was correct. It's not just the power that power is a very general word to sort of indicate what would happen if somebody were to punch somebody, the effect that the punch has on a person. That word power is not necessarily uh, the most descriptive word needed to use. Okay, let me explain what I mean. So one guy, he would punch you. You get punched by a guy, you get knocked out. But the reason you got knocked out by that guy was not because he punched exceptionally hard or anything, but it was because he caught you when you were least expected it. You've ever been, you didn't expect a guy to just tap you on the chin right there, so you never braced for it, right? And you get this, and you feel the pain all up in your chin because you didn't expect it. It was just a soft little tap, but it hurt so bad, right? This is the thing with boxing. Some guys they call power punchers, they don't necessarily knock out their opponents or knockout artists. They don't necessarily knock out their opponents with a tremendously heavy punch. They're not even trying sometimes. They're not even trying very hard. It's the timing of the punch and the placement of the punch. Another thing is when we talk about power, there's different kinds of ways guys punch. And just because of their makeup, some guys are very strong, so they punch very hard. But punching hard doesn't mean you knock out people. And punching hard doesn't necessarily mean that you got the kind of power that somebody else may have. Because punching hard doesn't mean that you punch. Okay, some guys punch hard, but they punch fast. They're quick with their punches. So it's not just a hard punch, but it's a quick punch. So sometimes you don't see it. So it has a tremendous effect on you, paralyzing when it does hit you. Depends on the mentality of the person who's getting hit. Some guys, they have very, very dense bone density. So, and they have big fists. So when they punch you, the momentum of their punch is such that it hurts you. They're not exceptionally quick punchers. Their punches are thudding. Their punches do a lot of damage. Can break bones and stuff because the hand itself is very dense. Okay, so they may break ribs on people and stuff like that. You have guys again who are powerful punchers in the sense that their timing is really good. They're not the fastest punchers in the world, but they perfected their placement and timing. And it's not so much about the speed of the punch or all of that. It's just a punch that the opponent is not able to defend. So they may throw looping punches, okay, overhand rights and looping shots and left hooks, and they hook a lot, okay? So they're able to generate a lot of torque. Some people, again, the technique that they use is what makes them exceptionally good punchers. It's not that they have tremendous strength necessarily, but the technique they use is such that the snap that they use, or the twist or the torque that they use, generates a lot of power. So when we talk about power punches, you have different kinds of power punches. Some are effective and some are not effective. They don't know how to use their power yet because they don't know how to shift their weight. They don't know how to step. so they don't know how to transfer that power to their hands and their wrists and their fists. Some people are very strong punches and everything, but they can't knock people out. So that in and of itself is very important. Now, another thing is people always believe because a guy's at a lower weight class, it means he don't have as much power as a guy in a higher weight class. It's not necessarily true. Of course, if you gain weight and you build muscle mass and you go up in weight, your power will go up with you. So you gain more power. Will it be more power relative to the people in the other weight class is a totally different story. Of course, the bigger you are and the more mass you have, is the better you're able to deal with, somebody who's smaller than you who may have more power. But again, power, like I said before, depends on so many different factors that a guy who may be at, say, for example, super featherweight might be able to knock out a heavyweight with a body punch. I may even punch harder than some heavyweights. So that when I was telling D Styles way back in the day about Chocolate Tito maybe knocking me out, I don't, because he was trying to say that Deontay Wilder has more power than Chocolate Tito, and I said I can't come to that conclusion just like that. I can't. Chocolate Tito first of all has short chopping shots. Chocolate Tito has short chopping shots. So if I was in a line of fire and I got caught with a left hook to the body or a chopping shot up top, I would probably get stopped. Okay. Deontay Wilder, he has much longer shots, but he does also have intermediate shots. But he's more of a rangy guy, so he needs more distance to really put his power together. So his power comes at the end of his fist. He's lightning quick, kind of like Crunk Jim kind of fighters. Quick, so he has speed, plus he has strength, and so he has tremendous power with that. Chocolatito is more short chopping shots. So it's a different kind of power with Chocolatito, but that doesn't mean that Chocolatito's power doesn't translate all the way up to heavyweight. Maybe if Chocolatito was to fight a heavyweight and catch him, in a spot where he can catch him, like maybe in his liver, or if somehow he could leap up in the air and catch the guy on the chin, or the guy's dipping in and he gets caught on the chin, he would do the same amount of damage as a Deontay Wilder. It's just that a lot of people do not understand. This is why we talk about Tank. Tank has power to knock out. I mean, Tank has knocked out heavyweights. Floyd Mayweather, who's not considered a great power puncher, when he was at super featherweight, was knocking out heavyweights. He put down heavyweight with a body shot. So what I'm trying to say to you is, weight classes do not necessarily tell you the power of a fighter. Okay, a fighter can have tremendous power and he's a super featherweight. And guys who spar will tell you, oh, this guy, he punches like a heavyweight, or this guy, man, he punches like a cruiserweight, or he punches like a middleweight. They'll tell you that, the guys that spar them, because what they're trying to tell you is these guys got a lot of power. It's just what it is for their weight class and beyond their weight class. They were to move up in weight. So this is what I was trying to explain to people. And these guys at the time, they were very macho and stuff. Another thing I want to recall to people, because what you need likes to bring back and bring back things to remembrance. Just like how with Jesus, he said, destroy this temple, I'll raise it up in 3 days, and they realized it meant his body, after a certain period of time. I want to bring this back to you because, again, I said Claressa Shields would be able to hang with Terrence Crawford for 4 rounds. I said maybe she would, especially if they sparring. We're not talking an actual match, but we're talking sparring. And a lot of people was mad at me. Now we see that Claressa, she been in there with thumpers. She's been in there with different kinds of fighters. I know they're mostly women. We know she spars guys because they can't get enough women to spar. So she spars guys as well. And she has sparred Errol Spence and so on and so on. The point behind it is, what I'm saying is, a fighter's a fighter's a fighter. Okay? I'm not saying that Claressa Shields would beat Terrence Crawford. I never said that. But I did say she might be able to hang, what I mean by hang, survive for 4 rounds against Terrence Crawford. Now, Terrence Crawford is an exceptional fighter. We just saw him knock out David Avanesian. And we'll go into that a little bit also in this feed. But what I want to say is, as much as Terrence is a killer and everything, Terrence is at a much lower weight class than Claressa Shields. Now, if you would be talking about Claressa Shields, she was a welterweight and Terrence was a welterweight, I could understand still Clarissa Shields, getting demolished by Terrence Crawford. But Clarissa Shields is really a 160 pounder. She's a 160 pounder. Not to say that Terrence can't knock out 160 pounders, but I'm just saying her body mass is much bigger. You see what I'm saying? She's much bigger. That's why with Arrow's putting the work on her as well. But the point I'm making is, you get in the ring. If you're a woman, you got to get your sparring. You got to get your work. And some of these women spar people who are light heavyweights and all kinds of different people. Right? You got to toughen up and stuff. And my point is not that I'm saying that women are better than men or some kind of stupid thing that guys who are very chauvinistic think. I am saying, and don't tell me no nonsense about bone density. I am saying that the truth of the matter is this: skill is skill is skill, warrior is warrior is warrior. Okay, I'm not saying that uh, women or men boxers are greater, and we know Chris is a tremendously accomplished boxer. I know women's boxing got a way to go, but what I'm saying is that you don't underrate somebody who's been a two-time Olympian. You don't look at them like an ordinary person. This is not no ordinary person. You know what I'm saying? This is a highly accomplished person. Same thing with Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford is a highly accomplished person, pound for pound, possibly the best fighter in the world. We will see when he faces Errol Spence, which will be coming up. We'll talk about that as well. So I wanted to talk about those two little points because I think they age pretty good. And it all shows everybody out there what you need wasn't talking out his ass. And what you need is not a guy that talks out his ass. He may say things that people as fans, it seems counterintuitive to them. But what you need, if any of you saw I got all my predictions right over the weekend. One thing about what you need, you'll realize is what you need is a guy who he don't second guess what he see. What he sees is what he will tell you. And we're gonna do some discussions over these weekend fights right now, and we're gonna talk about it in various ways. We're gonna talk about it three different ways. The first way we're gonna talk about it is the actual fights themselves, what transpired. The second thing what you need is gonna do is he's gonna talk about the future of these fighters, and then we're gonna talk a little bit more generally about how boxing is moving and progressing, and how we as people or boxing fans or people who box, how we can aid in this process. And some topics are really near and dear to my heart. So we're gonna get into it. So let's start off with the weekend fights in more detail. So I did the shorts, of course. I could have put up some stuff in the community post, but I decided to lay back, just watch what was on the scene, just listen to different people, different places. We'll start with the two main cards that were out there, and we're gonna talk about the prominent fights. Okay, so the main events is what we're talking about. So we had Josh Warrington, who faced I believe it was Luis Alberto Lopez over the weekend, and Luis Roberto Lopez really put on a boxing clinic on Josh Warrington. He put a boxing clinic on it. Now, to be honest with you, Josh Warrington started to read because one of the things that Luis Lopez was doing, he was throwing his jab and then he would come with an uppercut. He was looking for that right uppercut to cut through the defense of the high guard that Josh Warrington, had. And Josh Warrington started to get onto it, but very late in the fight. So he started to kind of counter Luis with a left hook. He would throw the left hook when Luis was trying to throw the right uppercut and catch him. And Luis would try to snap back and pull out, but he get caught. And Warrington was really coming for him in round 11 and 12. He picked it up in the 11th and the 12th round. He was really trying to gun for for Luis Alberto Lopez. But Lopez had too many rounds in the bank. This was not a no close fight like people were saying. Luis had outboxed him for maybe 10 up to 12 rounds. Maybe, no, I'm sorry, it was 10 rounds. It was a 10 round. So maybe 7, 6 of the 10 rounds. Um, Alberto Luis Lopez had a Luis Alberto Lopez had already outboxed Warrington. So it was really, and what Alberto was doing was keeping range. So he was popping that jab, and Warrington wasn't really popping his jab. You know, his hands was kind of kept at home for the most part. And this is the kind of theme you would see in almost all the fights where one guy won and one guy lost over the weekend. So one of the things, the key to the success, Southpaw or Orthodox, that we saw over the weekend was guys who used their jab. So that was something that it was an overarching theme throughout. Whether it was Terrence Crawford versus uh, David Avanesian, whether it was Teofimo Lopez versus uh, what was the kid name? Teofimo Lopez versus help me out here. What was the kid's name? I forgot for some reason I'm just forgetting names. You know, I'm supposed to pull it up on the drop of a dime, but I can't pull up this name right now. What's the guy name? Drawing a blank. Anyway, he faced, of course, he faced Mikey Garcia, right? It'll come to me. Oh yeah, there it is. It begins with S. Sandor Martin, right? Martin. So Sandor Martin, he faced uh, Mikey Garcia, but when it came to Teofimo Lopez, it was a totally different fight, and we'll talk about that. Also, uh, yeah. So those were the three main fights. Then you had what's her name? Cyborg, Chris Cyborg. She faced Gabrielle Gabrielle something. It's not Hennessy, so it's something else. I don't know why I'm thinking Hennessy right now. But Gabrielle, anyway, whatever her surname is. So anyway, we're gonna talk about these fights and Jared Anderson um and oh boy, why is it drawing blanks on these guys' names? And the Puerto Rican kid, and then the kid from the Olympics who got the silver medal. For some reason, I can't remember their names. All right, so let's go on to these fights, and then we're gonna talk about the future of these fighters. So, first one I want to talk about, like I said, was Josh Warrington versus Luis Alberto Lopez. Like I said, Lopez controlled the fight for the most part with the jab, kind of kept Warrington at bay. When Warrington did come to the inside, you know, he would set up with the jab his right uppercuts because he just cut through Warrington's defense with that right uppercut. He did throw some left hooks and stuff, but mostly that. And then he would snap back out of the way, pivot to the side or pivot backwards, and snap out of the way. And that's how he kind of hold on a second. That's how he kind of was able to defeat Josh Warrington. You know what I mean? And Josh Warrington, he came on strong, man. He came on strong in the later portion of the fight. Uh, but you know, it was too little, too late. You know what I mean? Too little, too late. So he kind of lost out in that wise. Excuse me here. Now the next fight I want to talk about before I get to the Crawford fight was Teofimo Lopez versus Sandor Martin. All right, so I see people talking about it was a robbery, and they were talking about how Sandor should have gotten the second knockdown. The people saying that they got an issue with Teofimo Lopez, I believe. Because nobody in their right mind would look at a guy like Sandor Martin who was hardly throwing shots. He was moving a lot, you know. He was moving a lot. He was being elusive, but he's hardly throwing shots. Teo was the guy popping the jab. Sando wasn't popping his jab. He wasn't popping his jab regularly at all. At all. He was looking at counter, and when he tried to counter Teal, Teal would come back with a counter himself. So I looked at that and I was like, Sandor Martin was hardly doing anything, man. He did drop Teofimo Lopez in round two. Teo got a little too eager, a little too aggressive after landing the body shots that he did. And he didn't come in off his jab. He just kind of reached in, and so he got caught with a check hook. And it was more of a balance shot, but because Sandor was pivoting out the way as he threw the check hook, whereas Teo was launching in. And so he kind of reached in and he got caught. And it was all balanced, so he got dropped. But to say that Teofimo Lopez, the other thing with Sandor Martin, now the commentary team for ESPN was just terrible. I don't know if it was because Tia was throwing shade at Max Kellerman. We're talking about the diversity in the telecast and that the black commentators wasn't even getting the screen time, which was kind of crazy. But I think that Tio did a great job in that fight. He didn't. I predicted. I didn't expect him to KO Sandor Martin. Some other people saying he was gonna get the KO and stuff. He gonna look spectacular and stuff. But truth be told, I didn't expect Teofimo Lopez to knock out Sandor Martin. I'll tell you why. The first thing was Sandor Martin's never been knocked out. Okay, he's a defense first kind of fighter, right? So Sandor Martin, he was playing defense all night long. Now he still got caught with body shots. Tia was stealing those right hands to the body. His jab was kind of on point too. Um, but when he got Sandor into the corner, this is what Tia was doing wrong. He would throw those double right hands and a lot of beautiful stuff Tia was doing. Double left hooks and stuff like that. But Tia would then, once he got the double right hands in, and Sandor would look to try and pivot out the way and turn him, Tia would smother. You see, he would smother his work. He'd come in and then he would clinch. That means Tio don't still have a really good inside game. He's got mid-range game, like I said before, and he did find his range very quickly in the fight. He established range with his jab. Sandor Martin actually has a longer reach than Tio, and Tio was able to pop his jab. And once Tio keeps his jab popping, Tio more or less controls the action. So it's always about who controls the action with the jab. Tio did get caught though with the check hook, which was a counter to his right hand that was coming in off the right hand with, and Sandor kind of pivoted out the way and caught him with the check hook. But Sandor is kind of dirty though. He's a dirty fighter in the sense that I saw him hit Tio on the back of the head a number of times in this fight, and that was because he couldn't really land punches. Sandor couldn't throw anything, and he couldn't land. He didn't mount much offense at all in this fight. Anybody who's he was moving, was doing a lot of movement, and he was somewhat elusive. Tio was missing certain shots, but Tio was constantly landing the straight right to the body. That straight right to the body was happening. He couldn't put his combinations together because Sandor, he was slippery. He could get out the way of combinations. When Tio got him to the ropes, the double right hands, and one of the beautiful things Tio was doing was mixing up the jab, and I like to demonstrate some of that. Let me see if I can do that. But hold on one second. I gotta just do one thing. So I'm gonna put this, and you're gonna see the ceiling for a second. Don't worry about it. Tio was doing some special stuff. And there was a certain round in which he was just dominating Sandor Martin, beating him up. He was landing everything, combinations to the body and to the head. It was beautiful stuff to watch. And all I just wanted to see him do was pop his jab, and he was popping his jab very regularly in that fight. And that's why Sandor Martin couldn't get off his shots, because Sandor Martin never got to pop off his jab like he really wanted to. And he was just sitting back waiting to counter too many times. And Tio is very, very quick. And the other thing about Tio is he counters the counter. So Tio is a guy that will counter punch. He's a natural counter puncher. And Mikey Garcia is not a natural counter puncher like that. You see? That's the difference. And Mikey Garcia is not as explosive and quick as Tio is. And so Sandor Martin had to deal with that, and that's what made him gun shy. Sandor Martin wasn't really throwing a lot of stuff, And that's because Teal was bringing the heat. And in the closing round, in the 12th round, Teal was really bringing the heat, trying to stop Sandor Martin, actually. And Sandor Martin stuck out his tongue on him because he was able to go the distance with Teal. But again, Sandor Martin's footwork was good. It was on point and stuff. All of that was cool. But making a guy miss and you're not making him pay for missing, what good is that? And Sandor Martin really wasn't in this fight taking any step forward. He was on the back foot from round one all the way down to round 12. There was not a moment where Sandor Martin was actually pushing Teal back, bullying him back, or anything like that. And he really wasn't landing much of anything. So this is why I never understood what people talking about robbery. This fight should have been, I think it was what was the judge's name? I think he got it really more accurate. The one who had it wide, I believe it was 7 rounds to 3. I think that's more like it. Because Teofimo Lopez, he took about 7 of those 10 rounds. 7 rounds to 3 sound more like it. Because Teofimo Lopez was landing all the time. People, the ESPN commentary team does a horrible job. I can't believe what these guys was doing. There was applauding Sandor Martin and his footwork and everything, but he wasn't landing nothing. When Sandor Martin finally lands something, they make a big deal about it. He landed the left hand once or twice. You know, he landed the check right hook once or twice. He landed a jab once or twice in the whole fight. He wasn't consistent with nothing. Teal was the guy that was popping his jab. The jab wasn't meant to again. There are different reasons for using a jab. The jab wasn't meant to land. He was popping the jab to keep Sandor Martin's hands at home, his lead hand at home. So he would stick out the hand, and I wish he would also do the touch jab. He wasn't doing too many touch jabs, but he was doing all kinds of jabs. I like how he hooked off the jab too. He had a nice little whipping hook off the jab that caught Sandor Martin. You know. Now a lot of people thought that Teal would smash Sandor Martin, which I never believed that, but he would smash him and get him out of there. And they say he would get a knockout. And I'm gonna tell you why you can't knock out Sandor Martin just like that. Sandor Martin, he uses a certain kind of footwork. And so he's going to keep you turning in a circle. You're going to be chasing him down. Even though Tio was doing a great job of anticipating what Sandor Martin would be and landing those double jabs or those double right hands and catching Sandor Martin because he knew where he would be as he pivoted out the way and he would change the angle and land those shots. It's still hard to put 2 or 3 shots together on Sandor Martin. So, you got to get him in the corner. And even then, he has great upper body movement. He has great foot positioning, can change the angle slightly, dip, slide in, clinch, slide out. And so you have to be a little bit more rough and rugged. And you kind of have to rough him up, almost like Miguel Cotto style, kind of elbow him and stuff and get him nailed down, hold him down into place, and then beat him up. That's what you got to do with a guy like Sandor Martin. You got to really beat him up, rough him up. And Tio's not necessarily that kind of fighter. He's a clean fighter. So I thought in myself, this is not, if it was Marcos Maidana versus Sandor Martin, it might be a totally different story, right? But, Tio did get Sandor in trouble in the 12th, but Sandor was able to, again, he was able to move out the way because he's a defensive fighter. Like I told you guys in my 15-minute preview, he's a defensive fighter, defensively minded fighter. And, what cost him the fight, obviously, was he didn't have enough offense. Right, he went totally defensive, and the reason he went totally different. So when Tio said that he was running, I wouldn't say he was running. Okay, he did what he had to do, to get his advantage in the fight. But Tio was saying that Sandor Martin was running. I wouldn't have said that, but I understand what he means. Sandor was constantly moving, constantly changing angles, and kudos to Sandor on that. He showed that he's a quality fighter in that respect. I'm not mad at Sandor for doing that. Absolutely not. He had to do what he had to do. Try and get the victory, right? He's trying to fight to win. So that's one of the styles in boxing, and you got to get used to it. You got to be able to handle that. You have to be able to cut off the ring on a style like that. And Tio, he cut it off in spots, but obviously he smothered his work trying to get to Sandor. He knew he could only throw like a couple shots, and then he had to clinch up because, he's not an infighter like that, right? And his thing is mid-range. So Tio, he did land some good shots on Sandor Martin. Let me just say, Sandor Martin also landed some good shots on Tio. snap back his head. But again, Santa Martin was talking about going to Teal's body. He never went to Teal's body. In that whole entire fight, I think he landed like two or three body shots on Teal. Teal was landing left hooks to the body. He was landing right, straight right to the body. Getting that straight right to the body. Now, let me tell you why Teal was able to do that against Southpaws. Why he had so much success against Southpaws like that? Because it was talking about, again, I heard the commentary team saying some really ridiculous things like Teal was frustrated. He wasn't frustrated. He was landing all the time. He was landing shots all the time. Why would he be frustrated if he landing shots? He just couldn't put two or three together, but he was landing his shots. The thing with it is, Teal was able to have success where Mikey Garcia didn't for two reasons. One is Teal circled the southpaw, the way how Floyd Mayweather circles the southpaw, the way how Tito Trinidad circles the southpaw, and the way how you circle a southpaw to take away the southpaw angle or a certain southpaw angle to give them advantage so they don't go weak side is you circle them anti-clockwise. Okay, you're circling to their power hand, but you're keeping a certain distance away from the power hand. And how Teo did that was by establishing his jab, so he could establish range. And once he established range with the jab, he knew that what distance he needed to be, so he could throw the right hand. He knew exactly. He measured out where Sandor was. Sandor didn't have the opportunity to measure out Teo with his jab. He had to count on Teo's jab to know where Teo was. And he still did a great job of counterpunching Teo. He was pretty accurate with his counterpunching when he did counterpunch Teo. Teo still didn't get his head out the way all the time. He was making mistakes in terms of defensive flaws, defensive mistakes in terms of sometimes he commit to the right hand, get caught with a check hook, kind of like what happened with Kell Brook versus Terrence Crawford. You don't want to be doing that kind of shit against a guy like Regis Prograis, a guy like Javante Tank Davis. You don't want to be doing that against guys like Ryan Garcia. They'll light you up. You can't be making those kinds of mistakes. I'm just saying. Teofimo Lopez now, he won the fight. You know, they said at the end of the fight he was questioning, if he still had it. He still has it. It's just, the excitement that comes with Teofimo Lopez knocking out guys. That's not going to happen just like that at 140. Let me tell you the guys that are at 140, so you can get a perspective of what Teofimo Lopez, what kind of division Teofimo Lopez is in. First, let's start with the easiest ones. The easiest ones are guys like Jose Pedraza. Okay, Pedraza is a guy who's a switch hitter and everything. It's a difficult style, and if you don't know what you're doing, he will make you look like a fool. Okay, so there's Pedraza that's up in there. Then you got Ryan Garcia that's in there. Ryan Garcia is going to be facing Tank Davis, probably at 135 if he can make it, because he looks huge now. He looks like a huge, 140 pounder. He put on some mass and everything. So I don't know if he can still handle that fight, and that fight will end up at 135 or will end up at 140. We'll see. But then, aside from that, he's also got these fighters. You're ready for it? This is how it goes. Sparks, the guy that got the decision over Love. Okay, Love and Sparks are in that division. Okay, they're the lower tier guys. Don't mean nothing. They're elite guys. So that's those are two guys that Teofimo Lopez might have to deal with. Then you got Lee, Brandon Lee. Brandon Lee is no joke. Okay. Then you got Richardson Hitchens. Okay, he's no joke. He can really box. He can really fight. And these are just the low tier guys I'm talking about. You got Antoine Russell, southpaw, devastating southpaw, knocking out people left, right, and center right now. He's another guy. These are the lower. This is just the lower tier I'm talking about in 140-pound division. Okay. We got Jack Catterall. We got of course Regis Prograis, who he's now, I think, in line to face. I think he's the number one contender to face Regis Prograis right now. I don't see him surviving Regis Prograis. I'm just gonna be honest with you. You can't be making them kind of mistakes, and getting caught with them kinds of shots. Regis Prograis would put you to sleep. Okay. And Prograis is a very, very big, very, very strong 140 pounder. Okay. You also got Josh Taylor. And you got that division is full of all kinds of people. You got also Richard Comey's also in that division now. You also got I I haven't seen him in a while, but something junior, something junior. Just he's under AB Promotions. I forgot what his name is. Mikey Garcia fought him. Um, something junior. I can't remember his name right now. So that division is raw with some. Oh, I forgot. Um, uh, Jose. Jose Ramirez. That's the division Teofimo Lopez is in now. And, these guys are used to being bigger and stronger. Teofimo Lopez's power is not necessarily translating the division. He's very sharp. But, his power is not like them guys' power. You know what I'm saying? He's going to have to develop that power a little bit more. And hopefully, he can do something in that division because right now I think BoxRec has him ranked as number 3, but I mean, the division is that division is cold. That's a cold division. That's a bad division. You know what I mean? They got savages in that division, and so Teofimo Lopez need to brush up on his boxing, particularly his defense. He got to keep that defense, as sharp as possible because the guys that he's going to face later on in the future. Now, what is a good? Oh, Barbosa is another guy. Now, in the future, what kind of opponent would he be facing? Well, one of the things I would advise Teofimo Lopez to do is face a guy that is coming up in weight. So a guy who is probably from the low weight division, lightweight or super featherweight, who's moved up of recent times into super lightweight. Because at present, I don't think he stands a chance against any of those elite lightweight, super lightweights right now, who've been in the division since the beginning. You know, but I can see him, maybe doing well with maybe a Pedraza. You know, uh, he not ready for none of those super lightweights who are big, strong, and young. He's not ready for none of them. You know, so that's my advice to him because Sandro Martin, he's not known as a puncher. But some of those guys that I just mentioned are punchers. They're boxer punchers. And I don't think he's going to be able to, if he makes a mistake like how he did against Sandor Martin, they will hurt him bad and then they'll jump on him, you know. So, um, and some of these super lightweights are huge guys. They could be at welterweight tomorrow. You know what I mean? So with the future for Teofimo Lopez, who I think he has a better chance of beating right now, maybe or help him to develop as a fighter. Maybe the Pedraza fight, maybe they can revisit that. Um, if he wants to step up, kind of step up thing, feel how he is with a big, strong, uh, super lightweight, maybe the Barboza fight, because Barboza I think with top rank, so that's a doable fight. But that's gonna be challenging. I'm telling you right now. Um, you know, um, the other guys. I mean, those guys are knocking out people left, right, and center. So right now, we don't want to really talk about that too much. I mean, Jack Catterall, will he be able to beat Josh Taylor? That's the question. Um, but as it stands right now in that division, I think that Teofimo Lopez does best to not necessarily face a bona fide super lightweight right now or elite bona fide super lightweight right now. It would be better if he kind of takes another tune up, make sure he's super sharp and he looks really good, before he thinks about facing like a Regis Prograis. Regis Prograis would probably knock him out. Regis Prograis don't play. He's very, very sharp and very, very strong. So, yeah. On to the next event. So, Chris Cyborg versus Gabrielle something. I can't remember what her name was. Um, Chris Cyborg was having difficulty closing the distance, and that was because she was trying to push off the front foot instead of the back foot. She's trying to push off the front foot instead of the back foot. And you have to push off the back foot to advance towards your opponent. So she has a lot to learn. She does have decent power because she dropped her opponent in the third round of their four rounder. Couldn't get the opponent out of there though. The opponent was ready to go, but it was not easy for her. So she has a lot of learning to do in terms of shifting her weight, balance, how to move in boxing, um, how to use her jab appropriately and effectively. So there's a lot Chris Cyborg has to learn, but we see that she has potential. So we'll see how that goes. And she's 37 years old. She's crazy. That's like eternity in boxing for women. Um, yeah, I mean that's basically it, man. Hamilton is supposed to uh, disperse money to me, or was it Sherilyn? That Auntie Martha wanted to send. I think she was sending another $100 towards me. Why am I telling you guys that? That's crazy. That means I'm very sleepy because I'm actually talking about things now that I probably shouldn't be talking to you guys about. Anyways, so in the middle, you can tell when I'm going to sleep. You can tell sleep and wake because you can't tell the difference between what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. We talking boxing, all of a sudden I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking it out loud, and that told me I need to go to sleep. And it is very late. But anyways, don't worry about what I just said there, which is crazy. Um, but yeah. With respect to Chris Cyborg, so she has a lot of things to work on, but for her debut, her first professional boxing match, officially, she's making inroads. It'll take a little time for her to get used to professional boxing in the ring on fight night. So it's gonna take a little while, but hopefully she can improve and do much better. The next fight that I want to talk about is Terrence Crawford versus uh, David Avanesian. David Avanesian, was using the peekaboo high guard. I've seen David Avanesian pop his jab, but he never really started getting his jab going at all. He was leading with either hand. Um, he had a nice looping counter to Terrence Crawford's jab. Terrence Crawford was keeping him at bay most of the time early on in the fight, but then Avanesian started taking up the ante and really started taking it to Crawford in rounds two and onwards. And he put the heat on Crawford. He was pressuring him straight through, but Crawford really took it up somewhere around round six. And in round six, Crawford started tagging up, using combinations. Avanesian was throwing his combination, but Crawford was really landing the crisper, cleaner combinations. He was getting hit a bit more than I would have liked, but he's scrapping with the guy. So he was, you know, tearing up the combinations on him. And then, of course, Crawford was able to put him to sleep, in between Avanesian trying to launch his attack. His defense was open, and Crawford caught him with what looked like, I think Crawford threw a left uppercut from the backhand. So he threw a left uppercut and then right hook and stopped him. Right, so he did a jab, left uppercut, right hook. I think it was something like that. But he was going to the body. He was throwing his punches. Left uppercut to the body, left hooks to the body, and he decided to take it up top. Because he was turning up the ante in round three. He was really tagging up Avanesian's body. Avanesian was starting to fatigue, slow down, as Crawford was slowing him down too. Before that, and Avanesian was starting to slow down, and when he slowed down, Crawford was able to piece him up, see the gaps, and hit left uppercut, right hook. You know what I'm saying? We know it as right uppercut, left hook for orthodox fighters. For southpaw fighters, it's left uppercut, right hook. And that's what he did. And he caught Avanesian flush. That combination. Avanesian didn't even see the left hook, left uppercut coming, and he didn't see the right hook. So he got knocked clean out. Um, but again, he wasn't using his jab. Now Crawford would probably want to go on to face Errol Spence next, which is something that Errol Spence actually announced. Yeah, okay, let's go for undisputed. So Errol Spence wants it as well. And Errol Spence, even though he was in an accident, he seems to be fine more or less. So Errol Spence versus Crawford. I'm telling you, it's a different fight than Crawford versus Avanesian. Okay, you're not going to see that because Errol Spence pops his jab. That's the first thing Errol Spence tries to get going, and hopefully Crawford can beat him to that, and or use Errol Spence's jab against him, something like that. But he has to be smart about it. I can tell you that. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. I am what you need. You guys have a good night. Peace, love, and everything good for you.